judge. Since about 2010, companies began to realize that their new storefront was their website. And since then, more customer relationships start on websites than any other channel. The fun part is that Google runs the world, and it keeps us on our toes with attempts to satisfy the algorithms and to get our web efforts to reach the masses. That's why we need experts like today's guest. Our guest this episode has consulted with various enterprises and well-known brands for over 10 years, while playing key roles with multiple agencies and solution providers in the inbound marketing industry. Known to many as SEO Steve, this digital marketer is also a multi-location SEO expert, an adjunct professor, and author. So to share his insights on SEO today, I'm happy to welcome to the podcast, Steve Wiideman.
Mr. Judge, thanks for having me on the show today. Happy to hang out with you and talk shop.
Definitely love talking shop, especially on this one, the one that I feel like is changing so much and is always a needle in lots of marketers' side, and that's SEO. But before we get into that, Steve, I know there's more about your story, so I was very brief on purpose because I wanted you to tell us more about yourself and your journey into SEO.
Sure. Well, I started as a webmaster, like many of us. I enjoyed building websites, and with building websites comes how to drive traffic to them. And you try different things, and you do email marketing, and you do paid advertising. And then suddenly you realize, I don't have the same budget as some of these big companies do. I'm going to have to figure out how to get free traffic to my website. What do I do? Or to the clients that we're working on. And that's what kind of ignited my passion for search, was how can I drive as much free traffic? Because you really felt like you were hacking traffic, in the early days of SEO. You're like, I was able to get 1,000 visits to this website without paying anything for it, just by adding some search terms, just by creating content that the competitors don't have, or better content than what they have. And so it was a lot of fun. I went back to school, got a degree in e-business management. I got to learn everything from database and web server administration to programming, basic programming, and graphic design. Funny enough, my graphic design teacher said I would never have a career in marketing, which is interesting, isn't it?
What did they mean?
And here I am, 15 years later with a lot more under my belt than I ever expected. So I went back to school, I got that degree, and started in corporate at a company called Paciolan, which is like a Ticketmaster company. And I got to work with email and very minimal SEO, mostly image optimization to be able to load thousands of people on a server at once. And then I picked up a small position with a company called Disney. And it wasn't a small position. It was a very exciting position. I ran the paid ads for Disneyland.com, commerce and marketing. Commerce for tickets, packages, reservations, and marketing for a new Nemo ride and grad night and all sorts of cool things that they were doing. And then this new brand that just came out called Adventures by Disney. And Adventures by Disney was interesting because the whole website was Flash-based. And I was running paid ads. All the ads were pointing to this one single URL that was Flash-based. And not every browser could render Flash. So I had to convince my boss at the time to take it from Flash to HTML and to give me the opportunity to do some SEO. So I worked for Disney for a couple of years, and then I got a job offer with an agency that was almost twice as much, but with all of the cool perks that Disney brings with it. Did that for a couple of years and realized agencies in the 2000s, not exactly the most ethical in how they approach, sell, and deliver on search. So, to sort of be closer to my family and get out of that agency game, I decided to branch out on my own. 2010, I was just Steve Wiideman, SEO expert. And 2015, my team and friends that I kind of carried along the way, we all got together and created Wiideman Consulting Group. And 6 years later, here I am with some pretty exciting accounts under my belt, and just launched the book you'd mentioned with a company called Stukent. So all the colleges that are using Stukent for their certificate programs will be using, our SEO textbook. So I'm really excited about that.
That's an interesting story. It's something that I typically ask my guests, how did you get from where you are? Because most people in marketing did not start in marketing. And you mentioned that you have some graphic design background and some...
my graphic design background's not that great, but web design for sure.
Web design.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we tend to come from either something creative, whether it be web design, which I've got a question later about that too, web design versus web development. but something creative or something analytical, and they all kind of have merged in this world of digital marketing, where you can come from many different directions, whether it be journalistic or creative or analytic. There's a place for you now in today's digital marketing.
Right. And if you're competitive, if you love to see yourself move up in search results and look at those numbers and see your page, whether you designed it, whether you wrote it, whether you're behind the technology that's powering the mobile experience for it, whichever role you're playing in helping to get that page to rank, if you are fascinated and passionate about watching that page move up, and having it appear for more search terms, then SEO is your game, right?
Mhm.
It's what I got addicted to, and it's what I've got a few of my clients addicted to. Some more than others, unfortunately. I still get text messages from one of my clients who checks his rankings every morning because he knows the dollar value of moving from
Yeah.
position 1 to 2 in a retail market where his products are in the thousands.
Yeah.
So he'll send a text message and say, "Hey, Steve, I just moved down number 3 for this term. Can you see what's going on?" And it's like, you have a whole SEO team now. Why don't you start with them? I know, but you're just the best at this. And like, no, just ask your team first. We train them. They got this. But that's how addicted some of these clients are, because they know, what that value is. They're looking at organic being the number one traffic generator. Even for large brands, organic is usually the number one traffic generator. Though for them, a lot of it comes from branded terms from the offline advertising they're doing, where
Mhm.
people are looking for them by name. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, and we do have to be a little bit of a multi-personality character to be
Yeah.
able to merge all of the different aspects of what goes into SEO. Good content alone won't help you rank. Good tech alone won't help you to rank. Good off-page visibility, links, and sort of entity
Mhm.
relationships won't help you rank. It's all of those things working together in tangent. That help move your position up over time, and it's nurturing those pages, not just loading them up
Mhm.
and letting them ride. And I think that's another misconception a lot of businesses have. But
Yeah.
that's the dynamic of our industry, and I think that's what either drives a really good SEO, or it drives people away from SEO into some other industry, because it's a lot of responsibility.
There's a lot, and I'll tell you what I want to do is to try to capture some of all those things. As I think about what you just said, I want to try to wrap it up and get it in three things, basically.
Sure.
So what I hear, looking at some of the things, some of the services you provide, and some of the things you coach on and teach on.
Mhm.
Um, so I want to try to cover three things in this conversation. One, talk a lot about local SEO
Okay.
versus say multi-location SEO, and I want to add in there no location SEO, like your SaaS companies and services.
Sure.
Secondly, web developers versus web designers.
Hmm.
There is a difference, and I want to make sure our audience hears and understands the difference between a web developer and a web
Hmm.
designer and how it applies to SEO. And
Okay.
then, of course, my company, Content Master, we create content. And as we explain to our clients,
Such a great name. I love that.
yeah, thanks. Our focus isn't, we don't sell SEO as a service, a standalone service, but
Yeah.
when we create content, we make sure there's SEO in the mix, that there's SEO backing it up. So those three things I want to definitely touch
Let's
on.
do it.
So starting with local SEO versus multi-location SEO. How
Sure.
does an SEO strategy differ between local and multi-location?
Sure. I think the primary difference is where you're pointing the traffic, right? For multi-location brands, you're going to point a lot of the traffic to the specific location pages. If you've got 100 locations, they all have their own specific web page. Most of the traffic you're going to try to drive to those pages. Where if you're just a single location, you don't have store location pages because you're just one store, you're just one location. So a
Mhm.
lot of a lot of the focal points that we'll put into getting a page to rank, the hours of operation, the directions, the maps, the all those different attributes that play a role in where we show up below the map pack, and sometimes even in the map pack. Those things are going to be omnipresent across the footer of that single location website. That's the
Mhm.
primary difference. Beyond that, the four fundamentals of local SEO aren't different at all. It's still making sure your business data is accurate and is being fed to all the right places where it's being purchased and used for directories such as Data Axle and Localese Newstar and Foursquare. Right, you make sure your business data is in there and managed either through a Bright Local or a Moz Local, or some other local data management. Number two is going to be that local page content. whether we're a single location and we're putting all that great information, into the lower portion of our page, maybe even into the upper portion, depending on which page we're on the website. For our multi-location brands, it's going to be that single location page. And if you have more than one location in a city, you might even have a city level page. Now you have two opportunities to appear in search. You have one to have in the map packs with your two locations or three. And then you've also got the organic listing below the map where you can have your city show up. So the city level page or CLP and the property level page or PLP give you more real estate and search results. We recently did a study. If you look at our website, we threw it in the top navigation for local SEO best practices. We actually studied 300 local pages, and we came up with specific statistics that'll help SEOs and digital marketers like yourself to build a business case. When a client says, "Why do I need this?" There's an actual statement in there that says, "Hyperlocal content will give you a 107% competitive advantage." Right? So we actually try to make it actionable and give our community some arsenal to go back to the developers and the business owners to really optimize those pages. Third is going to be your business data visibility. How often is Googlebot and Bingbot finding your business name, address, and phone number across the web? Hopefully in all the same places your competitors are. Hopefully in all of the local, regional, city directories. Hopefully in all the industry directories. If you're a lawyer, you're in Avo and Justia and lawyers.com and FindLaw and All Law and all of those, right? So that's number 3. And then number 4 is going to be your reputation, because nobody clicks on a 1-star review. So those are sort of those key elements, right, of a local SEO play, whether you're single location or multi-location. Where I see the problem, the challenge is that there's still business owners and marketers that feel like it's a set it, forget it. But if we're nurturing all 4 of those areas over time, we're getting our business information into more directories and more placements, maybe even on local blogs. We're getting more links and visibility to our websites. We're getting more reviews and ratings. Maybe even giving some cues to people who are giving reviews to use words that describe our products and services so that we appear for a wider array of them, and setting those goals and saying, hey, local SEO team, in the next year, this is what we should be hitting. This is our goal for data. This is our goal for our local pages, conversion rates, and keyword rankings. This is our goal for our data visibility and how many citations of our business we have. This is our goal for reviews. And then every month you sit down and you go through that and you hold each other accountable to the results. Maybe even do some performance incentives to motivate the team to go above and beyond. But that to me is sort of the essence and foundation of a really strong local SEO strategy for higher placement in the map packs and that landing page optimization for the organic below the map packs in a local search query.
Now, you use the term map pack. What is that?
Those are the 3 listings that appear from Google Maps in a web result. If you do a search at google.com, they'll show maps, right?
Okay. Yeah, I'll admit, so my company is, well, based on my previous network is where my company customer base started from. Mostly technology, SaaS companies. And so we're primarily B2B. And I admit, we often forget about B2C because we don't, we have B2C people in the audience when I go speak, for example. We have B2C clients who come to us, but we know that our target is typically B2B. And so sometimes our content misses the mark on talking to the B2C audience because that's not the focus of our audience. So it's really interesting to me to hear you tell me, because I'm learning about the local part because I'm so focused on B2B. Even some of the terminology you're using is new to me because I'm so focused on B2B. So I'm glad we're providing some value to our B2C listeners who have these local businesses and can learn from this. So now,
I can tell you for B2B, it is a different dynamic, right? For B2B, when we think about paid or organic search, the funnel's a little bit different. The call to action isn't buy, purchase, order, book now. It's a soft conversion. It's getting them to engage in some way where they become part of your reach so that you can take them down a journey through email, through remarketing, through, bringing them back, through a sales process by showing them convincing and helpful content. I would say the upper funnel content strategy is much more important in B2B and than B2C. B2C, it's still important, but I think for a lot of people, they're just looking for a product, get it, and they're done. But for B2B, you've got to develop a trust and rapport with the client. You've got to convince them that you're the vendor that they want to go to through through examples, through videos, through help guides. So I think using tools like Answer the Public or SEMrush has a question tool that you can filter into to get the who, why, what, how, strategies, tips, ideas. B2C would have recipes too, right? You come up with all of these sort of upper funnel answers to common problems that happen in the industry. You provide data that only you have. You do your own studies, your own research, your own surveys, your own focus groups, and you come up with information that no one else has. And then you socialize that. You share it through press and PR, real PR, not the old spammy, PR web stuff we used to do back in the early days of SEO, but genuine PR. B2B SaaS company discovers that 65% of users on smartphones do X. That's cool. People are interested in that. Drives them to the website. People who are writing similar articles will reference that when they're doing searches so that you earn links instead of having to pick up the phone and call for them. So that B2B, cycle is definitely, it's definitely longer, and it definitely takes a little more creativity, and it takes some patience and a lot of testing, a lot of A/B testing. Let's change the call to action for sign up for a webinar, try a demo for free. Let's start with I read this case study on how so-and-so was able to double their traffic.
So
right?
now
Whatever.
you're in my world. Now you're talking my language now, that B2B talk. So I want to ask you about that
You
because
asked for it.
I asked for it. Well, yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, I definitely want to bring the value to B2C listeners, because we don't talk about B2C enough probably on this podcast, because like I said, my circle tends to be more B2B.
Right.
But you mentioned earlier, B2B, the call to actions are different, and the cycle is longer, and our clients typically are B2B, and so we create content for them. And we explain to them that, from the start, before we take on a client, we say, now, this is not advertising. This is content marketing. It's a long game. It will help you build brand and trust and, a higher quality client over time, but you have to be patient for that time to pass.
Right.
So when we talk about SEO, the first thing that comes to mind for them typically is words, blog articles, SEO, keywords, and blog articles.
Sure.
But Content Monster, we create the heavy lifting stuff. We create video and podcast. And there's also a big SEO factor in that. I did a talk at Content Marketing World a few years ago called Content for the Robots, where I went through every kind of content and how you have to be aware of how there's an SEO play in every single kind of content. Even with video, my dad used to say, when he was explaining something, he would say, "You see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying?" I said, "Well, Google sees what you're saying. If you have a video, Google literally does see what you're saying."
And they
And
do the captioning for free now, so they
exactly,
absolutely
that's
can
proof right
extract
there.
audio.
Exactly. I showed on the screen a picture of a video that I uploaded, did nothing, but the captions were generated, which is proof that Google could see the words that I was saying and could index that. So yeah, tell me more about, speak to people who, or help me speak to my clients who, I'm creating content for them, audio and video,
Sure.
and how much of an SEO play that is for their websites and for their marketing.
I think we could all look at it strategically instead of saying, "Hey, let's just start creating some stuff." Instead, let's look at what's driving traffic to our competitors. Let's look at their top pages that get the most links, the top pages that get the most shares, the top posts in social that get the most engagement. Let's really take a look at the competitive landscape and some of our own data from our own Google Ads and Bing Ads efforts. What search terms, what placements, are really driving conversions and customers for us. Let's take all of that data in aggregate and let's create a new information architecture for our website that's founded on the top search terms so that we're building our website based on how people search the internet, not based on what we want to share on the internet. And
Wait, say that again. I want to repeat that again, please.
we're building content based on how people search the internet, not based on what we want to share on the internet. I think that's super important mindset because now, I know us as business owners, like we do this and here's why you like us. And it's like, did people ask you for that? Or are you just randomly throwing it out there because you think that's what they want? So I think in taking that other approach of what are people searching for that I offer and how do I emphasize that in my navigation and take all the other stuff I want to share and de-emphasize it and maybe just incorporate it into that other content. Once you've built that site map, that site plan, the roadmap of content that you're going to create, you're likely going to take that super competitive keyword, right? If you're an attorney, you're probably going to have truck accident lawyer. If you're a B2B SaaS provider in, let's just do influencer marketing platform, right? You have a platform for influencer marketing. You have a single page on your website, not your homepage, for influencer marketing platform. And then now you're going to take all those great content ideas that relates to that parent topic, and you're going to put them under that silo. You're not going to put them on a blog post or in a resources section or an article section. You're going to nest it right under that page. So that way, your competitor is competing with one page. You're competing with a whole section of content, supportive content that uplinks back to that page through the breadcrumb system, through the site structure, through the information architecture, allowing you to have hundreds of pages of content in support of that parent page for that competitive keyword that you're going after. So I would say if you're going into a content strategy and you really want to get aggressive with SEO, do that competitive insight. It can take months. It took me 6 months to do the taxonomy plan for Applebee's. It took me 90 days to do the plan for Jacuzzi, right? 18,000 keywords to go through and sort through to organize and theme and sub-theme until I knew absolutely what people were looking for, what attributes, what different ways that they were searching for these products and services. So take the time to do that. And if you have the budget for it, because it can be expensive and it takes a while to do, once you've got that, you've got your all-inclusive roadmap for the rest of the year. And it's going to include both upper and lower funnel. So you take your lower funnel and you prioritize that to make sure that you're driving customers. And then you augment your overall content strategy with your upper funnel by creating a syndication process when you do launch all those how-to, where-to, why-tos that fall underneath that parent page. So it all kind of plays together into a sitemap, eventually into a calendar, into a content marketing calendar that includes social media sharing. And now you've got a workflow. Now you've got a streamlined process and you have expectations. Your team knows exactly what content's coming down the pipeline. They know exactly the process of looking at the competitive landscape for the keywords that content's going to address. And if there aren't any keywords that content's supposed to address, you have to kind of look at it and say, do we want to have a separate page for this? Or should we just start incorporating some of this language into our copy so that we have less pages that receive fewer visits? I know it was a lot to take in and unpack, but hopefully that was helpful.
It gave me a question, though, a very specific question to a problem that I've seen lots of companies have. And I actually even we've struggled with it a little bit too. So you mentioned the information architecture of your website.
Yep.
Typically on a website, you have the homepage, you have product pages, product or service, and you have your blog. You mentioned there's somewhere in between there that's not a blog page, but yet it's a topic page. How does that work in the website structure? If it's not part of the blog role, but it's not a product page, what is it?
It's a great question. And even if you read some of my old ebooks from the 2000s, you'll see that I was really heavy on using blogs for evergreen content. Now I look back at some of those posts and they say 2008, 2009 in the search results. And I'm like, no one's clicking on this, right? Why did I do this? We did it because we could syndicate our RSS feed and get immediate links back to our pages before there was a duplicate content or thin content update, in 2011, before there was a explicit link penalty that happened with the Google Penguin update in 2012. So we used to use the blogs for evergreen, and there's still, unfortunately, a lot of business owners that don't know that that's not what the blog is for. The blog is for a very timely, here's what's going on right now. Here's our voice on a topic that's being discussed right now. Here's what's going on with our company, our team, our industry. Here's some seasonality things. Here's some, it's really sort of time-sensitive content that belongs in the blog, because some people use RSS feed readers and they like to see new, fresh information about something that's relevant now. Something that is more evergreen, that's not going to change in the next 3 to 5 years, really belongs nested underneath its parent category on the website. If it's a sales page, you create some links on that sales page to the supportive information, how, what, why, who, and it falls underneath that folder, that directory on your website, so that it can support that parent topic. And that's the approach we've taken with the clients that we've had the most success for. We had one attorney that we were able to do that with a very competitive national keyword. He closed nearly $40 million in cases in one quarter in 2019. And it was all through this idea of moving content from the blog to nesting it under the appropriate parent keyword that we want ranking.
Now,
So
from
I
a
think
technical standpoint,
that's it.
was it just another, this is really under the hood technical, is it another category, another blog role, different RSS feed, that it's
No,
really technically still a blog role, or is it just a standalone
nope,
page that
it's
you
a
point
page.
stuff into? It's a page.
Yep, posts to me are for time
Time
sensitive,
sensitive.
short term information. But there's no reason why in one of those posts you couldn't put a link to one of those pages and at the end say, hey, if you haven't read our page about what, how, why, check it out here. You could use your blog as a way to promote your pages, absolutely. But I wouldn't use blog posts anymore for lower funnel or evergreen content at all. I would keep that for
That's
short
interesting.
term information.
That's interesting. I think it's debatable. I don't disagree with you, but I know people who would, because there's a term, evergreen blog content, which is
Uh,
contradicting itself, I suppose.
Blogs are
Um,
dated, though. Remember that. Blogs have a field that has date, and you can hide it all you want to, but
but
it's got a date.
it's got a date. So then that page, if it
Mhm.
isn't part of your blog role, and is it also not on your menu either? It just
Of
lives?
course. Well, it'll be on your menu in that section of your site. So if you're targeting influencer marketing platform as an example, um, when you're in that influencer marketing platform section of your site, then absolutely you'll have some links either in the navigation, especially on that parent page, so that Google
Mhm.
can crawl from your homepage to that section and then crawl to those pages from that parent page. But it's grandparents, parent-child relationship in terms of how the
Mm,
site's structured. And the breadcrumb system that you use, home and category and page, helps the search engines and the users reverse navigate and understand how your site's structured.
got you. So not necessarily top level menu, but somewhere on that homepage that can
Right.
breadcrumb you into it.
I would put those competitive search terms right in that top menu. You'll see a lot of attorneys doing this now more than ever. And if you use archive.org for those attorney sites, you'll notice it was always home, practice areas, attorneys.
Hmm.
Now it's car accident lawyer, truck accident lawyer, wrongful death lawyer, and then about us and all the other crap that they don't want showing up in search results falls in that other part of the navigation. But their most important keywords are the ones that are in their top nav and linked to the most because that's what they want to dominate for.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make sure, I'm going to text my developer right now. Please go change some things, because you sold me on that. Definitely.
I
Definitely.
do have some videos too on how to build a taxonomy and do some of the keyword research. If your listeners are interested, you could totally check out the course that mimics my Cal State Fullerton course. It's at Academy of Search, and just use my handle SEO Steve,
Mhm.
and all your listeners can get total free access to all of that stuff.
Absolutely. Make sure we get those links to put in our show notes as
You
well.
got it.
Yeah, definitely. So, last thing I want to talk to you about is something I mentioned a moment ago about texting my developer. Is something that I really want our listeners to understand. I think you're a good person to separate the two
Okay,
between developers and designers.
sure.
Back
So,
when we used
yeah,
to
go
do
ahead.
website design,
We were everything.
yeah, exactly. We were everything. And, back when people would say, hey, I can do Photoshop, so can I do a website? No, you've done a picture of a website. You haven't done a
Right.
website. And then people would chop up Photoshop, call it a
Mhm.
website with no regard to the development to the back end.
Right.
And then over time, people realize, okay, there's more to it than just a picture on your computer. It's actually
Sure.
a living, breathing, thing. So I
Mhm.
think now we're at a point where people are starting to understand there's more to it, at least from the B2B side. B2C, maybe don't. They don't know the difference, maybe. So please
Sure.
help us clarify to those who don't know the difference between a web developer and a web
Mhm.
designer.
So that's a really easy one, actually. That, like you said, the web designer, the person who's designing what the site's going to look like, lives and breathes in programs like Photoshop. Right? They go into Photoshop, they create some graphics. It's all just binary zeros and ones. Right? If Google were to crawl that image, all they would see is zeros and ones. There's no links. There's no text. You might see text, but that text actually embedded, on an actual image. Right? It's an
Mhm.
actual JPEG, if you will, right? And there's other tools now that you could use as well to do some design work that helps with, as you start to get that transition from design to development. But for the most part, all design happens in some sort of a design program. The web designer should also be skilled in something called conversion rate optimization to make sure that that when visitors do hit our website, that they're more likely to become customers. They
Wait, are
should
you
be
saying
designing with
that designers need to understand marketing?
on today. Web designers should be correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know there's probably far and few that have studied it. They like I design sites. I took some inspirations from other websites. I hope you like it, and I'm done.
Mhm.
But if it's not quantifiable, it's not really for marketing. You're just building a pretty picture, a pretty website.
Exactly.
Pretty websites don't generate money. Effective websites do, right?
Mhm.
So, building an effective website means starting with a design that's built with a mobile first interface. And I know if you're thinking B2B, a lot of your B2B customers might be on desktop. Your dentist office front desk person who's ordering equipment probably isn't doing it from their phone. So it's important to know who your audience is. But either way, Google's still going to use the mobile view of your website when they decide where you're going to rank. So if you're going to strip out some content and some features that you have on desktop, keep in mind you're stripping that out for search engines too. So your designer should be thinking about how do I get a user through an experience where they can just use their thumb, right, as
Mhm.
with one hand, and be able to tap their way through an experience using autofill on forms, keeping a call to action sticky in the footer of that design. So no matter how they're flicking through the site, they can always very quickly get to that learn more, right, for B2B folks, or buy now for B2C. So the designer's a, a personality that has to understand a little bit of buyer behavior, has to do some research, has to do some testing on what a design looks like. Once that design, the first initial design's been locked down, you're right, it passes on to a web developer, and the web developer will have specialized skills in certain platforms. The developer might be really good at building a WordPress theme from that design, meaning they're going to take that design and they're going to use the WordPress templates, right, for the header and the footer and the homepage, the blog page, right? They're going to take all those kind of out of the box templates and they're going to apply that design, and customize it for each of those templates. That means cutting it up using slices or whatever in Photoshop to start with. It means, taking the images off the text and making it actual text that search engines can crawl. It means setting up divs and code and headings the way
Mhm.
that they should be structured within the HTML of the website. Making sure that you're not changing core features of whatever CMS that you're using, because if you do, and then you click that magical update WordPress button, your whole website could go away, right? You want to make sure that you're
There's some developers
sticking with
who
fundamentals.
get zealous with what
Mhm.
they can do. I think they overdevelop, and like you said, they develop something
Yeah.
that's so, hey, this would be cool. This would be cool. Let me do that. This would be cool. And then, like you said, they develop
But do the
something.
users care? Do they really need all that
Users don't
functionality?
care.
Do they need the
Google
sliders, the
doesn't care.
carousels?
Exactly. It may be beautiful. I mean,
Yeah.
you got two things. You have the designer who gets
Mhm.
overzealous with beauty, like this is beautiful. It slows your website down, and Google hates it, but it's beautiful.
Uh-huh.
Then you have the developer who makes it dance and sing, but it slows it down, and Google hates it. So
Yeah.
both of those need to understand marketing. That's the reason why I
Sure.
paused you earlier, because I'm a marketer, and
Mhm.
I've done those things. I've done web development. I've done web design. But one thing I've learned is that if it's for business, you have to make sure you do it that works for marketing and works for business. And if Google doesn't like it, your design or your development doesn't matter.
It's an interesting ecosystem because there's standards, and sometimes we want to be creative. Sometimes we want to be different. Sometimes we want to be unique. And while there's so much value in that, and I love creativity as much as the next guy, but if a visitor gets to your website and they have to figure out where they go because it's not set up with a standard top navigation, the logo is not in the top left and clickable to go to your homepage, right? If it's not set up in the same way that they're used to navigating the internet and they have to think, it's going to cause friction in that whole conversion process. So we want to minimize friction by sticking to standards. Still, be unique, be creative, but do it in a way that follows standard, industry guidelines so that the user doesn't have to try to figure out how to use your website when they get there.
So, what are some of the most? I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was thinking about. I saw a website where I got to the website. It was beautiful, and I swiped to scroll, and I couldn't scroll.
Oh no.
And
Oh,
I'm
the
like,
map. You got stuck on the Google map or something.
no, their website, it was a big image, and they
Okay.
had a button somewhere where I would click and it would slide or would change or
Oh
whatever.
wow.
It was a beautiful design. I'm like, I was screaming at the designer. I'm like, "You freaking artist. This is beautiful, but it's not a website.
But I
I
can't
can't
use it.
I can't use it. Do I need to turn in my mouse for something else? Because I don't know where to
Right.
navigate." There was nothing about it that was traditional. And
Mm.
I'm not saying you have to be square like everyone else, but it bugged the crap out of me that I couldn't even scroll. I wanted to just scroll up to see what was next. There wasn't anything next. The website was only a screen height. That's
Mhm.
all it was.
Yep.
And it was by design, but most people are used to seeing more than a screen height.
Mhm.
And it wasn't easy to tell that I had to click somewhere to get to left or right or another page. It was just,
Right. Wasn't very intuitive.
I think it was a
Yeah.
fail. So, that's one of the things that I think probably also runs into a lot of the things that when Google's looking for what works right and the usability, user experience is really big right now. When you're looking at companies' websites, what are some of the challenges you see right now as some of the biggest blockers
Sure.
that you see a lot of?
I kind of feel like the biggest challenge most clients have with search engine optimization is what they're doing off the website. On
Mm,
the website, yeah, every business should be chipping away at that page that drives customers, and doing better at that. I think everyone should have their eye on those top 10 or 20 pages on their website that they know need improvement and could be better. That when they have some extra budget, they should put it into redesigning those pages and making them better.
mhm,
But I feel like the biggest challenge is off the website. Yeah, the technical part's important, and Google has recently said that the new Core Web Vitals updates that they're making are more than a tiebreaker. But honestly, if you have the absolute best content and people get what they need, and a majority of the people who are searching click on your listing and stay there, you're going to be okay. You don't need to have perfect page speed scores. You don't need to have perfect technical SEO. Your site doesn't need to validate W3C standards, right? If you've got the better, more helpful page for users on the devices that they're visiting your website from, you're going to be okay. It's the biggest challenge is getting other websites to mention you and those search
mhm,
terms that you want to appear for. Google already knows what page on your site to rank for those keywords. Now it's up to you to get your business mentioned in correlation to those search terms off the internet on large news sites and industry sites to be everywhere your competitors are mentioned. Whenever they're
mhm,
mentioning you, you could go back to them and say, hey, thanks for mentioning us. Could you make our name clickable so they could visit our website? That's
mhm,
asking for a link without asking for a link, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge right now is the off page. The technical part of SEO, the primary things to pay attention to with the team are security, privacy, accessibility, mobile friendliness, and then chipping away at conversion rate. If you're focused on those things every month, you're going to be fine. And speed does help conversion rate, so why not keep chipping away at that? But don't do it for the sake of a technical audit that an SEO consultant gave you. Do it for trying to get more customers from the traffic you're already getting to those pages, and focus your energy on trying to build your brand. Stop trying to clean in house, and start putting up more signs outside the house to tell
You know,
people where to go to find you.
you just relieved me of so much stress. Well, because our website, it's a good example of that. It's
Mhm.
working. The content is good. It's driving business. It's converting.
Yep.
All those things that are important to business are working. If we
Hmm.
run an audit, oh my God, the scores are horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we probably have a bad template we chose or the bad design from 3, 4 years ago. That's going to be a heavy lift to change. And the
Mhm.
question is it worth that heavy lift to change those things if the site is actually working?
I feel like if you're a tiebreaker for your competitor, like, man, my competitor's page is just as good as mine. I ran a survey with Mechanical Turk, and 50% say they choose me, 50% say they choose them. So we're equal to them in the quality of our content. And we look at the links that are coming to our pages, and they're equal in terms of the quality and quantity. The tech could be a tiebreaker for you. If you feel like you can't do any better with your design, and if you feel like you've exhausted all of those different link opportunities, which you never really do, but if you feel like you have, then yeah, chip away at some of that stuff. But rarely do you ever get to that place where you feel like your page is genuinely better than the competitors. You're always
Yeah.
going to be sort of critical of your pages, and you should be. I mean, search engines that the algorithms work in patterns. That it's not a set it forget it. It's not a I just got 20 links to my website. Now I should be ranking better. Well, how many did you get this month? None. We got 20 last month though. We're good. Well, what's that say about the pattern of things that are happening with
Mhm.
your on page and off page? Oh, so every month I should be improving my page. Yeah, every month I should be getting new links and mentions of our brand and those pages. Yeah, it's about patterns and velocity. That's how algorithms work. They don't work with a one time. Okay, I have database that this is how this site is and where it should rank. I'm done. No, they're constantly changing and shifting and evolving and refreshing and recycling. So I would say just keep nurturing your on page, your off page, and what users see in the search results, by putting more structured information and rich results so that users want to click on you more often, and that they want to stay on your website more often because you're improving those focal points. If you're holding your team accountable to those three things, my on page, my off page, and my search behavior signals, and every month you're holding each other accountable to better results, you're going to be just owning the search. You're going to watch as you continue to grow slowly over time, and your competitors go up and then down, up and then down. They play this crazy headache game because they're trying to game search results with techniques where you are focusing on strategy. You're about the style of SEO, and they're about the fashion. So I would say be the stylish SEO, not the fashionable one.
Wow. So for those companies who are focused on, the fastest host or debating about CDNs, having those three things you just said are more important over time if they're consistent with those things. Great, because I've been there before. I've been that person stressing over a CDN.
And sometimes you're not going to be able to. Think about it, if you're a gallery, right? If you're promoting paintings and photos, you're not going to want to put lower quality images on your website. People are going to expect high quality images. They're going to expect the page to take a while to load because you've got great, really high definition pictures. Mm-hmm. There's ways that you can load them where they load faster and they're still high quality. And there's ways that you can optimize them, but your page is never going to be as fast as an article somewhere, because it's really rich in media and it requires high definition images that are going to take a while to. Google's not going to penalize you because a page is slow on a page that users expect it to be. That's just crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Steve, it's been a great conversation, and
it's been fun.
Look forward to keeping in touch because there's so much information. And as someone who my background is not far from yours, I've done web design, web development. Now I'm in marketing, and all the technical stuff. Sometimes I wish I didn't know because I shouldn't be worrying about a CDN or about the report, the analytics report that Google gave. That's just like, oh my God, that score is that low. What are we going to do? When in actuality, business is still happening. And I see some companies that, are the top company in their industry who have horrible Google statistics. I'm like, that's proof right there that it's not everything. It's not the whole world.
It's not build a plan, create a roadmap together. What technical things do we want to work on? What's our content roadmap look like? Where are the places that we want to earn visibility off the website? And what are some of the tests that we want to do with how our listings appear in search results? Focus on those, and you've got yourself a good long-term SEO strategy.
Excellent. Nice wrap up. So before we go, Steve, tell us, how can our listeners get in touch with you and either online or in person, or about your courses or whatever?
Oh, I'm so easy to find. Just search SEO Steve, right? I think I have that handle everywhere. If you want to talk to anyone on our team, we love to help businesses. We're at a place, where you can't really take on a lot of new clients, but if you want to ask questions, if you want us to hop on a quick call and give you some free advice, we're happy to do that. Just use the handle Wiideman, Wiideman. That course I mentioned is just academyofsearch.com. Use code SEO Steve for free access to all the good stuff there.
Awesome. And thanks to the listeners. If you're listening to the podcast and want to see Steve and I, video the podcast and others are available in the podcast section of contentmonster.com. Once again, Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mr. Judge.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Marketing podcast, a show brought to you by ContentMonster.com, the producer of B2B digital marketing content. Show notes can be found on ContentMonster.com, as well as aleejudge.com. To continue the conversation, be sure to follow the podcast on your favorite podcast platform.